This summer, I read a total of 9 books and DNF'd 2. So, should we talk about it? This summer was definitely about me relearning to love the whole reading experience. I've always loved reading. I've always loved a really good book, but I have just reconnected with it in a fun way. Having a place to escape whenever this reality is too much is fun. So my biggest reading goal this summer was to just figure out what I like, what I truly like to read over and over again, things I don't like, maybe challenge myself to read something I may not even think I would ever like. I'm gonna go through and give you a full review of every single book that I read this summer, including the ones that I had to put down for various reasons. Some that I thoroughly enjoyed, others I kind of regret spending the time on. And by the way, my name's Melizza, and this is my channel. We've slightly revamped the reading corner of the Dream Space. I have a brand new TBR cart. Isn't she so cute? I have been thinking of doing this for a little bit now because all the books on my physical TBR have just actually been in the same place, but instead of in a cute, cozy cart, they've been on the floor. Now they have a proper place to live, and I feel like this will inspire me to actually pick up books from it. All of these books are relatively new, by the way. If you've watched any of my bookstore shopping tour, you have probably seen a majority of these books. I've got some fairy loot ones at the bottom for my ultimate summer reading vlog, but I think just having them in sight, there's like a floaty in the air, okay? I think having them in sight will really, honestly, just remind me that I have all these stories to dive into instead of just scrolling on the Kindle store and finding something that maybe sounds interesting and downloading like 50 samples of books and not committing to a single one. Book number 1, I think, is actually on my shelves. I'm really excited to talk about this one. Lore of the Wilds by Annalee Sabrana. I bought this book immediately after seeing the cover on TikTok because the cover was all I needed to see to know that this is my favorite genre of book, Black girls on fantasy book covers. I never get sick of reading about Black girls in fantasy realms because that's where I want to be. I'm gonna keep this review short and sweet because it was in my 24-hour reading challenge. Lore of the Wilds was an easy 4-star read for me. We're starting off real strong this summer, and the quick synopsis is that Lore is a human. She gets taken to the Fae world. The Faes hate the humans in this world, and she is tasked with taking care of / cleaning up a secret ancient library that only humans can get into. That is the setup. There is a plot twist at the end that I don't think I really saw that coming. I have to go back and watch my 24-hour reading challenge to remember, but I don't think I saw it coming. I need to know what happens in the second book, and I'm really hoping that Miss Annalee is already working on it and that we can have it sometime soon. It has everything I love. The main character's name is Lore, which I think is so cute. I love when titles incorporate like the names of characters in a way that you don't really expect. Like, you don't expect her name to be Lore when you pick this up. At least I didn't. I love that she has big curly hair, and that was a point in the book that really stood out to me that I just smile thinking about, is when Lore is trying to figure out how to take care of her hair when she has changed environments, and like, where do you get good hair care in fantasy realms? That is such an important question that this book does answer. The romance is very light, definitely not the main point at all. So not only am I a mood reader, but I am also a very particular reader. Reading a hardcover is very different from reading a paperback. Both are very different from reading on the Kindle, and the Kindle is different than listening to the audiobook. And trust me, I love all forms of book, but I have learned over the summer that I prefer certain genres, certain types of stories in each medium. So the next 2 books are a perfect example of that, and they are the first 2 books in the series. Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimando. I read a hardback book, a Kindle book, and an audiobook in that 24-hour reading challenge, and this was the Kindle book, and I ate it up. I gave it a 4.5-star rating in that vlog, and as far as I can remember, I think I agree. I just remember constantly wanting to click this little Kindle page and blowing through this book so fast. You know when you're like obsessed with a story and you have to know what happens so you can't stop reading it? That is how I felt with this book. And this genre is different from the one previously mentioned. Finley Donovan is Killing It is one of those cozier, I know that I say cozy so much, and I'm trying to learn new adjectives. That's why I'm reading, to learn new words. But it is one of those cozy murder mysteries. Quick synopsis: A woman mistakes Finley for a hitman in a random conversation at a Panera Bread, and now she is tasked with taking out this woman's husband. It has one of those funny, quirky, almost unbelievable starts, and that is what makes it kind of interesting to me. I think that's a little bit more of a fantasy element. Like, obviously this is not real, so it doesn't like affect me the way a thriller would. I can't do that much scary. I can do cozy comedic murder mystery though. And I think if you're interested in the genre, this could be a really good place to start. Finley is a very, to me, lovable character. Elle Cosimando does a really good job of making you root for her from the very beginning. You want to see Finley win. I do remember really enjoying it. However, the second book in the series is called Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead. And I was so excited to read this because I really did like the characters. In the first book, I liked the setup, I liked the ending, I liked the segue into the second book of the series. But instead of reading this book on Kindle, I decided to try listening to the audiobook version. And little did I know that that was a really big mistake. This is kind of weird, but I think because I read the book myself the first time, I made up like a voice in my head that I think Finley sounds like, that I think her husband, her nanny, her kids sound like. So I have kind of created this whole world already. And the audiobook voices, no tea, no shade to the voice actors, fantastic job. Their voices are different than the ones in my head, and I think that it made me feel like I was reading a different world, and I just couldn't get into it. So much so that that became the first book that I DNF'd this summer. The whole thing goes down in my Colorado reading vlog. I definitely explain more of my thoughts there, so if you want an in-depth review of why I DNF'd that book, go watch that vlog, but I can't even give it a rating. I think there's like 3 more books in the series. Will I be picking it up? With caution. I'm gonna go through these next few books a little quickly because you can see me actually read them in my reading vlogs on my channel. Let's start with The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. I listened to this as an audiobook. The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. I'm 2 hours in already, and it is unlike anything I've read as of recent. It's a very cozy fantasy romance set in Britain. The voice performers have accents, which I think just makes me that much more interested in the book, and it's holding me over until part 2 of Bridgerton drops. Let me figure out how to explain this in the most concise way that makes sense. Okay, Britain figures out time travel. They set up a program where they extract people from different periods of time, reasoning unknown at the moment, just to figure out if they can do it, really. Once they bring these people back from whatever time they're in to the present, they pair them with what's called a bridge, which is a person from today's world that helps them like basically assimilate into humanity and society as it is in this time period. Our female main character is the bridge to the male who has been extracted from, I want to say, like the 1800s. So he has a problem with the fact that she works and like wants to clean the house herself because he thinks that she should have servants, things like that. It's kind of giving My Roommate is a Vampire, but British time traveler version, and honestly, I'm here for it. That was a 3-star read for me. Next up, made popular by Book Talk, Bride by Ali Hazelwood. 24 hours, well, I was gonna say 24 hours on the clock, but 0 hours on the clock, 24 to go. Ali Hazelwood's Bride. Sorry if it's like really echoey in here. The ceilings are at least 2 times as tall as they normally are in my house. Speaking of tall beamed ceilings, the first book I am reading during my 24-hour cozy reading challenge here on Family Vacation is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is such a cute little book. I'm a little over 100 pages in, but it's still like quirky, fun. At least the narrator's voice is still like quirky, fun, Ali Hazelwood writing, and I genuinely enjoy it. It's a very easy read, easy to follow along. The story starts very quickly, and I find myself wanting to keep turning the pages and keep reading because I just love the world that they're in, which let me break it down for you. Our main character is a vampire. Her name is Misery. Lark. The name is very much fitting for this girl. She has quite literally been collateral damage in her like vampire society. She's basically sacrificed her life for the peace of this society unwillingly, just because she was a child and she was told to do so. And that has escalated into an arranged marriage between her and the new alpha of the Weres, which is like the werewolf species in this book. And he's dark and brooding and all of the things we love in a fantasy romance. At the time of finishing this book, I rated it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I stand by that. A little switch up from the fantasy genre, we've got Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. Adorable. This is a YA young adult British, which I didn't know until I started getting into the book. British teen romance, I guess, little rom-com. And so far it is adorable. I'm gonna read you the summary or the backity back. Could you brave the wilderness with your highly suspicious and unfairly cute ex-best friend? Bradley Graham is pretty much perfect. He's a star football player, manages his OCD well enough, and comes out on top in all his classes, except the ones he shares with Celine Bangura. They used to be best friends until Brad decided he was too cool for conspiracy theory obsessed Celine and literally abandoned her for the popular kids table. Boo, Brad. At least, that's how Celine sees it. These days, Brad hates her guts and the feeling is mutual. So when Celine signs up for a 2-part survival course in the woods, she definitely doesn't expect to find Brad right beside her. Forced to work together for the chance to win the grand prize, Celine and Bradley must trudge through not just mud and dirt, but their messy past. That was cute. I liked that sentence. As this adventure brings them closer, they start to remember all the good parts of their history, but has too much time passed or just enough to spark a whole new kind of relationship? And an overall 3 stars. And for one of the It Girl books of the summer, Funny Story by Emily Henry. I think it's fun to try out whatever is popular. It does make reading feel like a fandom whenever you're reading a popular book, because for me, I just want to know why everybody else likes it, and I want to see if I like it just as much or if I like it less. And I think that's what makes reading a community you can be a part of from the comfort of your house in a comfy reading chair with a nice good book, right? Like, that's fun. But what's not fun is accidentally turning off your microphone, although maybe I needed to, because the audio settings on whatever mic this is were just not it for this video, and for that, I apologize. But voiceover Melizza is here to make it up to you. I really wish I heeded the warnings on these next 2 books that I read this summer. I listened to the audiobook version of the Lightlark series. There are 2 books out right now, Lightlark and Nightbane, both by Alex Astor. And I'd heard pretty polarizing opinions on these books, and one of the loudest opinions I heard about this book is that it was unoriginal. But hear me out. I don't read the same type of genre over and over again for originality. I do it for comfort. So the fact that we've seen a lot of these character tropes before didn't turn me off from wanting to read the book. I honestly thought it was comforting, and I think that's also because I listened to it as an audiobook. I don't think I would have been as invested had I read this book, but it is the perfect kind of audiobook to put on while you're doing something like your curly hair routine, which takes hours. I could semi-sniff out the plot twist in the end just because things were a little bit too convenient for our main character, Isla, but I liked the world, the magic system, and the love triangle enough to continue on to the second book, Nightbane. It picks up the moment after the first book ends, which I find very satisfying. However, this book did make me understand those very passionate, polarizing opinions, because I can't even remember what happens in this book, but I can remember wanting this book to end. I didn't feel like the conflicts of the world that had built up to the second book felt like a very natural flow, and I was so disinterested by the end. I don't really have a want to read the third book in the series, which is kind of sad, and I ended up giving Nightbane a 2-star rating. For the last book of the summer, The Proposal by Jasmine Gilroy, I actually started reading this on a road trip that we took through the mountains, and I did vlog it, so here you go. So today we are going to a baseball game, and I love sporting events, but what I love more than the sporting event is preparing for the sporting event. Typically people will look up the stats of the players, who's who, where are we playing, what's the weather like, but me, I decided to prepare for watching this baseball game by reading a baseball romance. Okay, I thought this was a baseball romance. It just starts off at a baseball field. Let me give you the quick synopsis. Everything I'm about to say is kind of summarized on the back and happens within the first 5 pages, so I'm not counting it as a spoiler. Our main female character, Nick, goes to a baseball game, an LA Dodgers game, with her boyfriend of 5 months who's like an actor with a man bun. And as she's going through the game, she's kind of doing her work. Her boyfriend's like, hey, Nicole, like look up at the Jumbotron, I think you'll like it. And on the Jumbotron, it says, Nicole with a C. This is very important. Nicole with a C, I love you. Will you marry me? She then has to follow her heart and denies him in front of a stadium with thousands of fans. In said stadium, we find Carlos, who is only sitting a few rows away and kind of saw the whole debacle unfold, and he steps in at just the right time to save Nick from huge humiliation. That is such a 2000s rom-com intro to a movie if I've ever seen one. So I'm looking forward to heading to this baseball game and kind of feeling what that may be like for myself. I could not imagine being in front of that many people and having to do something as embarrassing as saying no to a wedding proposal. So I am a little over 100 pages in. I'm on chapter 9 if you've read the book, and I just want to give you some of my thoughts. When I first picked this up, I did think that Carlos was going to be a player on the LA Dodgers, but he's actually a pediatrician for a teen clinic. I've never read a character like that before, so it's been fun to get to know him. He's a man who feels like he has to take care of all the women in his family, so seeing our main character Nick in help, he just sort of stepped in as Superman. And the big point about this book so far is I am smiling and like audibly laughing, belly laughing out loud. Specifically at the part where Nick is telling her 2 closest friends how the proposal went down. The way that is just girlhood written. I was laughing so hard. I could see some of my friends saying the things that her friends were saying, and they just have such a close dynamic, and that made me smile so, so much. Think of your favorite movie from the early 2000s, if you have one. I have one. Mine's 27 Dresses. And a few others that we don't have time to get into. Those sort of serendipitous, happy vibes from those movies is in this book. And I know that I say that this book gives rom-com, this book gives quirky a lot, but I mean it. And people told me this book was gonna be a good time, and so far, it really, really is. This is also a random side note. We have been introduced to a fitness instructor type character. I relate to her so hard because if you don't know, I did teach spin classes for about 6 months, and just the way that she controls the room and the funny things she says, like, you can do anything if you put your mind to it, you just gotta believe. I felt that in my soul. How crazy would I be if I brought this book into the stadium? What if I just... Hopefully they let me bring this in. Like, don't ask questions. It's a book. It's a book, right? This book was such a fun time. I rated it 5 stars before I was even finished, and by the time I got to the end, I think it was very well deserved. Before we end this video, I do need to mention very quickly the second book that I DNF'd this summer, and don't come for me, but it is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and this is a me problem, not an Abby Jimenez problem. I think that because I'm such a mood reader, I just picked this up at the wrong time. I was looking for something a little bit more easy and fast-paced, and this is definitely a slower burn. And as far as I know, it's much less fantasy and more real-world romance, so I just need to be in the right headspace to give this a fair read, and I will. I'm not taking it off my TBR. And if you have any fall recommendations for my TBR in addition to the ones I'm showing you now, as Sabrina Carpenter says, please, please, please leave them in my comment section. I would love to see what you guys are reading or what you guys like, see if I like it, create one big happy reading community. And until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye.